On episode 24, yes, 24, oh my goodness, of the podcast, I'm going to talk about comedy, PriceCon 2.0 and basketball. And something else, I'm also using a pop filter, so I have no idea if it's actually going to make the quality of the podcast any better or not, but let's get through it and see what happens. That was drawn out. Hello, and welcome to another edition of the podcast. How are you going? I hope you're doing well out there. I'm going okay. Going okay. So let's get into the first story now. A couple of weeks ago, I went to a comedy night because a colleague of mine, a co-worker, was having a go. I think it was their second time of doing a bit of stand-up comedy. So they had a crack at it. They had a go. They talked about their cats and how their husband dropped them when they were dancing and they subsequently got a concussion, and I had to do their job for about a week. There you go. It's a bit of insider goss. It's not insider, I don't know. But yeah, so they just, told various stories. So I had to talk to them the next week or whatever because I had to go to work, so I saw them, of course. We had a bit of a chat. And they said, I mentioned that previously, before, I thought about having a go at doing some stand-up comedy myself, because I sort of said to them, I don't necessarily think it's what you say, it is how you say it. And they were like, yeah, it makes sense. So we had a bit of a chat, and they encouraged me to reach out to the organisers of the particular comedy night. There's a local bar, could you call it a bar? A local sort of, craft beery place. And I think it's the third Friday of the month, they have comedy. So I reached out, and so not today or Friday, the day of the podcast, but I think it's next Friday, I will be making my stand-up comedy debut. So I'm going to tell the story of the shirtless man from episode 1 of the podcast, making a reasonable request, and we'll see how that goes. And I will report back to you on if I bombed out or if I got some lols in the next episode of the podcast. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe I could start a career in stand-up comedy. I don't know. Now, as you will recall, last episode of the podcast, I talked about going into a store and they had some drink bottle holders for bicycles. Some were $5, others were 10, and they were the same product. The only difference was the colour. Now, I think it might have been last week. Anyway, so there's another price con, if you'd like to call it that, 2.0. I come across, I may be saying the word con is a bit over the top, but a price thing I noticed last week. Now, I was at a games store. I was at EB Games. There you go, I'll say it. Which for you overseas listeners is like GameStop. Same thing, they sell games, have used games, all that sort of jazz. So I was in there, and they had, it was like used games, they had buy 2, get the third free. So basically, you buy the 2 most expensive one, and whatever one's the cheapest you get for nothing. So I was looking around, and I was going through the trays, and they had Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, if you haven't played Red Dead Redemption, it's made by Rockstar, so that's the company that makes Grand Theft Auto. And it's basically Grand Theft Auto, but like westerny. So you ride a horse around, and you can lasso people and all that sort of stuff. So I previously had played Red Dead Redemption, but they had Red Dead Redemption 2 there on PlayStation 4, so I thought, I'll get me that. Now, the copy I first saw was $88, so it was pre-owned, $88. And I thought, no, I'm going to put that back in the tray, and I'm not going to buy that. Anyway, so I continued to look around, continued to browse around, and then they had more copies of it, and they were cheaper. So the one I got a used copy of the game for $64. Now, why is there a difference of, what's that, $14? No, is it? No, 10 more takes us to 74, 20 more takes us to 84, plus $4 to 88. Why is there a difference of $24 with this game? It is the same game. It is a used game. Why is there a different price? Why was one $88? The other one $24, $64, a difference of 24. Why? Ridiculous. And when I was looking, there were other copies in the stack that I got my $64 one off that were also 64, 65. Well, I think they were all 60. There was a couple of them, 2 or 3 others, and they were $64. So why was there this one rogue copy for $88 and the other one $64? I don't know. It's a price con. It's a price con. Price con 2.0. There it is. I should have said to the guy, I should have been like, so why is this one $88 and this one $64 dues? Cobber. Why? You know? Yeah, anyway. Maybe it's all, I don't know. I could hop into the ruse room, but I don't really know what my reasoning for doing so would be. I don't know. It's a con. It's a scaremola, and I'm onto it. I'm letting you people know as well. We're all onto it. We're all over it like a rash. So, this is going to be fun, this story. On Sunday night, a friend of mine, their parents and I, is that proper grammar? I think it might be. We went to a basketball game. And the game itself was pretty decent. I'm not like a huge basketball-y person, but the game itself was pretty decent. I suppose you could say the home team, even though they're from down south, so because I live up north, I'm hardwired to hate anything that comes from the south, from down south, because there's a great north-south divide here. But they blew the game in the last quarter. They could have won it, but they didn't. They blew it and lost. And I said to my friend's mum, when the last quarter started and they'd played sort of a minute or so, I said, they're going to lose. And they did. I should have put $1 on it. Should have put a bet on. Anyway, now, the game was good, but of course there was a bit of other stuff going on to try and keep the crowd hyped up. So there was a bit of an announcer guy, and he reminded me of a boxing announcer. Very, in the red corner, we've got this team, you know. And I said to my friend, now, there's an episode of The Simpsons called Homer the Smithers. That is the name of the episode, where Smithers goes on holiday and he gets Homer to cover for him, and Homer ends up punching Mr. Burns. Mr. Burns then learns how to do things for himself, so when Smithers comes back, Smithers gets fired. Now, at the start of that episode, they go to, I think, Speedway, or Dragway. And the announcer guy's like, power, power, power! We're here for the so-and-so race. If you've ever seen that episode of The Simpsons, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Now, this guy, the announcer guy, was like that bloke. And oh my God, you're there and you want to watch the game, but this guy's just talking stool, and you're like, just be quiet. I want to watch the game. Give me some quiet. And myself and my friend just ended up ragging on this guy pretty much all night. So I wrote down some quotes, some quotes and things. And now these are some of the names, right, he used for the players. Now, one of the players, his name was Trey. So the announcer guy was like, oh, Ice Trey. Yep. Somebody else, there was a player, he reminded me of Shaq, reminded me of Shaquille O'Neal. My friend of mine will completely disagree with that summation. But anyway, so he was Beast Mode. His name was like Phillips or something. Oh, Beast Mode Phillips! Oh! Somebody else was the engineer. Somebody else was the highway robber. Somebody else was the bone collector. There was a player who was the hustle. And then one of my personal favourites, a guy came on right at the end in the last quarter when they blew the game, and he was the shoes. He's like, oh, the shoes! Andrew Scott's on the field. Whoa. Oh, God. And then whenever there was like a block, so whenever the opposing team went for a score, went to dunk a basket, whatever you call it, and there was a block, he'd be like, oh, not in my house. And this is, oh God. And somebody was going for a 2-pointer, and he's like, oh, it's a doozy of a Twosie. I'm 100% serious. This guy was saying this stuff. Another great quote was, like Mario finding a mushroom, that's a one-up. Oh, God. And what else did we say? Oh, he's not just a beast on the court, he's also a beast with cookies. That might have been old Beast Mode Phillips, I would assume. Oh, my goodness. And then whenever there was like somebody scored a 3-pointer, he'd be like, 1, 2, 3, Beast Mode Phillips. It's a game of I just want to watch the game. I do not care about your, like, DJ Kearns being awesome, but just shut up. Just be quiet, please. I want to watch the game. It was really, it was like, oh, this guy at the start, like, what a dude. And then after a while, it was, I wanted to throttle him. I just wanted to say, just be quiet, please. I want to watch the game. That is it. Now, here's a question. If I know some listeners to a podcast in the United States, if anybody's ever been to an NBA game, does this sort of thing happen at an NBA game? Or is there just a bit of silence and you can actually concentrate and watch the game and see what's happening? I think one thing the guy did, which was okay, was he's like, oh, there's a foul on, player XYZ, that's their fourth, it's the team's fifth. That was good. However, all this other stuff was just annoying and obnoxious and completely unnecessary. But if anybody's ever been to an NBA game and they do some similar things to that, let me know. Send me a tweet or an email. Well, that is it for this episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. A little bit longer, sort of, maybe than usual. I don't know. I'm at about 13 and a half minutes or so maybe a bit shorter once I edit. However, send me a tweet, L_who's talking. We're on the Facebooks, and you can send me an email as well. That juice is in the description. I hope you have a nice couple of weeks, and I'll let you know how the comedy goes, and I'll catch you next time.